Zane O'Connor stormed into the tiny, cluttered lost and found room at Grand Central Station, muttering, "This place smells like old subway tokens and heartbreak," as he yanked his sunglasses off and looked around impatiently. He was not used to waiting. Not in boardrooms, not in restaurants, and definitely not in places that had plastic bins labeled umbrellas and single gloves. But today he was desperate. Somewhere in this chaotic city, he had dropped his wallet, his favorite Italian leather one, with his black card, his driver's license, and a photo of his late mother tucked behind the cash slot. "Can I help you?" a warm voice asked. Zane turned around. She wore a thrifted denim jacket over a white dress, her dark curls pinned up in a messy bun. She had paint on her hands and a smudge of something blue on her cheek. Her name tag read Valeria Wren. She looked like she didn't belong in this dusty closet any more than he did. "I lost my wallet," he said, trying not to sound too irritated. Her eyes flicked to the counter behind her. Brown leather, no ID visible, but a photo of a woman in a red dress? "Yes," he said, surprised. She nodded, reaching behind her and pulling it out. "Dropped off by a conductor. Said some guy in a suit took off in a rush and left it on a bench." Zane stepped forward, taking the wallet gratefully. "You have no idea how important this is." "I think I do," she smiled, eyes softening. "That woman looks important." "Your mom." He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. She passed last year." Valeria's smile faded slightly, her voice gentle. "I'm sorry." She must have meant a lot. More than anyone, he almost said, but Zane wasn't in the habit of opening up to strangers. Especially not when they looked like they smelled of lavender and cinnamon and sunshine. He pulled out a silver money clip. "Let me give you something for it." "No," she interrupted quickly, raising a hand. "We don't accept money for returning lost items." Zane blinked. "Really? Really?" She tilted her head. "Besides, you didn't lose your wallet here. You left it on a bench like a rookie commuter." He laughed despite himself. "Fair." She waved him off with a cheeky grin. "Try not to lose any yachts next time." Zane turned to go, then paused. "Wait. What's your name again?" "Valeria," she replied, her eyes twinkling. "But everyone calls me Val." "Nice to meet you, Val." "I'm Zane." She raised an eyebrow. "Zane O'Connor?" He froze. "Yeah." She stared at him for a beat, then shrugged. "Huh. I thought you'd be taller." He barked out a laugh. "You've heard of me?" "I work at the Lost and Found, not under a rock," she teased. "You're in the news every other week." "Billionaire tech guy who bought out half of Midtown and made an app that tracks pigeons or something." "It's a security platform," he said, amused. "But close enough." Val smirked. "Well, congrats. You just got your wallet back from someone who doesn't care about your billions." Zane looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't fawning. And she definitely wasn't impressed. It was oddly refreshing. He reached into his wallet slowly and pulled out a sleek black card. "Okay. I know you said no money, but let me at least buy you dinner." She laughed. "That's still money." "Not if it's just a thank you," he said, tilting his head. "Let me thank you. Properly. One dinner. No expectations." Val hesitated. "Do you always ask out women who hand you things you lost?" "Only when they tell me I'm short and insult my career," he grinned. She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks turned slightly pink. "Fine. One dinner." Zane grinned, victorious. "Tomorrow night? I'll pick you up." "I don't give my address to men I just met," she said smartly. He pulled out a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Then meet me here," he said, scribbling the address of a restaurant in Tribeca. 7 sharp. She took the card, studying it. "This place has $3 signs on Yelp, doesn't it?" 4, actually. She whistled low. "Better not be one of those places that serves a foam cube and calls it dinner." "It's not," he said, backing toward the door. "But if you're into foam, I'll make sure they add extra." Val laughed, and it hit him in the chest in a way that surprised him. He walked out into the afternoon buzz of Manhattan with his wallet in his pocket and something strange fluttering in his chest. He'd gotten back more than his wallet. He just didn't know it yet. The next night, Val stood outside the restaurant, clutching her thrifted clutch and trying to not feel out of place. The restaurant looked like it had been carved out of a diamond. She was pretty sure the valet guy made more in tips than she did in a week. Then a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up. Zane stepped out in a navy suit, freshly shaven, eyes locked on her like she was the only person on the street. "You came. You invited me," she said, heart hammering. He offered his arm. "Come on." "I told the chef no foam." Inside, the place was candlelit and quiet, the kind of place that whispered money with every marble surface and silver-accented dish. Zane led her to a private table in the back, where the waiter already waited with a bottle of wine. Val looked around, overwhelmed. "You really don't do casual, huh?" Zane smiled. "I don't do normal. But I wanted to see you again." They talked, and talked. About her job, her art, her ridiculous landlord. About his company, his late-night coding days, his mother's favorite cookies. He was smart, funny, surprisingly humble, and she made him laugh. Hard. At one point, she reached for her glass and knocked it over, splashing wine across the white linen tablecloth. Zane just laughed and handed her his napkin. "Finally. Some chaos in this perfect place." She laughed too, cheeks red. "Guess I'm good at that." He looked at her, eyes soft. "Yeah. You are." By the time he walked her to the subway, the city lights glowing around them, Val's heart was doing things it hadn't done in years. She turned to him. "Thanks for dinner. I had fun." Zane hesitated, then reached out, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Me too." They stood there, the traffic humming behind them, the air between them charged. Then she leaned up and kissed him. Just once. Soft. Quick. And it wrecked him. "I'll see you soon?" she asked, pulling back. Zane nodded, dazed. "You'd better." She smiled and disappeared down the steps into the subway. Zane stood there for a long time after she was gone, wallet safe in his pocket, heart suddenly not so safe at all. 2 weeks passed. Zane O'Connor sat in his office on the 48th floor of the O'Connor Technologies building, staring at the city skyline, but thinking only about one thing. Val. He hadn't meant for this to become a thing. One dinner. A thank you. A pleasant evening with a woman who didn't flinch at his name or watch his every move like it might turn into a news headline. But somehow, one dinner had turned into 3, then 5. And now he knew the exact shade of gold that sparkled in her eyes when she got excited about something. He knew that she painted in the early mornings with her windows wide open and music loud enough for her neighbors to complain, and that she hated olives with a passion that bordered on violent. He also knew that she hadn't asked him one question about his money since that first night. "Sir?" Zane turned as his assistant, Mallory, stepped into the office, tablet in hand. "You're due at the investors' roundtable in 20 minutes. Cancel it," Zane said, grabbing his coat. Mallory blinked. "Sir." "Reschedule. Something came up." He didn't explain. He never did anymore. Outside, his driver opened the door to the car, but Zane waved him off. "I'll walk." It was a crisp afternoon. The sidewalks bustled, but Zane cut through the noise like he belonged to a different rhythm. He didn't head toward Midtown or the Upper East Side. He headed downtown toward a narrow street where laundromats shared corners with bakeries and people knew each other by name. He found her where she said she'd be on Fridays, behind the counter at the community center's art studio, covered in charcoal, dust, and laughter, surrounded by a group of kids arguing over whose clay sculpture looked most like a dog. "You're early," Val said, glancing up and brushing her hands on her apron. "I left work. Just like that. I'm the boss." She gave him a look that was neither impressed nor surprised. "You're lucky these kids don't care who you are. They've been trying to figure out if you're a famous actor or just someone's uncle." One of the kids, a curly-haired girl with purple glasses, tugged on Val's apron. "Can we give the tall man a name?" "He already has one, sweetie." "But he looks like he needs a new one," the girl insisted. Zane crouched down. "What do you suggest?" The girl studied him solemnly. "Captain Business." Val burst out laughing, her whole face lighting up. "Perfect." Zane nodded. "I'll take it. Do I get a cape?" "No capes," the girl said gravely. "They get stuck in elevators." He stayed for an hour. Longer than he'd meant to. He helped a boy fix a broken easel and somehow ended up covered in glitter. Val watched him with a sideways glance as he knelt to clean up a spill. "You know, Captain Business," she said later as they walked down the block together, "I'm starting to think you like this chaos." "I like the quiet in it," he said. She frowned slightly. "That's a contradiction." "Not really. It's noisy, but it doesn't demand anything from me." They stopped at a corner where the traffic light blinked red. Val turned toward him. "You could have anyone, Zane. You know that, right?" He didn't respond right away. "Is that your way of asking why I keep showing up?" "Maybe." He reached out and brushed a streak of charcoal from her cheek. "Because I haven't met anyone else that makes me forget I'm supposed to be someone else all the time." She looked startled for a second, then looked away. "That's heavy." "It's honest." They reached her building, a weathered brownstone with ivy creeping up one side. She hesitated at the door. "I don't usually let people in," she said quietly. "I'm not asking to come in. But if I did ask you," she said, voice low, "would you say yes?" "In a second," he answered. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. "Then don't just stand there." Inside, the apartment was small but warm. Books stacked on every surface. Canvases leaned against walls. A cat blinked at him from a sunny windowsill and promptly turned away, unimpressed. Val kicked off her shoes and pulled her hair down from its knot. "I haven't cleaned. Don't judge." "I wouldn't care if this place was on fire," Zane said, stepping inside. "It's yours." She turned to look at him and something shifted in her expression. "You say things like that too easily." "I mean them. That's worse." She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with two mismatched mugs. One said "World's Okayest Artist." The other had a chip in the rim. They sat on the couch, knees touching. "I've been thinking," she said after a long silence. "You live in a world where everything comes with conditions. Investors. Contracts. Shares. Nothing is free." He watched her carefully. "Go on. I don't want to be something you collect. Something you put on a shelf and forget about when the next crisis hits." "You think I'd forget about you?" "I think people like you are used to getting what they want. And when they don't, I've lost things I can't get back, Val. I'm not afraid of losing a deal. I'm afraid of losing something real." She looked down at her hands, then back up. "Then what are we doing?" "Something dangerous," he said. "Something honest." There was a long pause. Then she set her mug down and leaned in slowly, unsure. He met her halfway. This time, the kiss wasn't soft. It was full of all the things they hadn't said yet, of the questions they were afraid to ask, of the possibilities that scared them both. When they broke apart, her eyes searched his. "This doesn't feel simple." "It's not," he said, his voice rough. "But I don't want simple. I want this." She leaned her forehead against his, breathing him in. "Then promise me something. Anything. When this gets messy and it will, don't run." He took her hand, threading his fingers with hers. "I won't." "Not from you." Outside, the city went on, cars honking, sirens wailing, life moving at a pace that didn't wait for anyone. But inside that tiny apartment, Zane O'Connor sat with his fingers tangled in Val's, and for the first time in years, he wasn't trying to be anything but exactly who he was. And she was still looking at him like that was enough. Zane adjusted the cuffs of his dress shirt as he stepped into the mirrored elevator of a high-rise in Soho, his reflection staring back at him, cool, composed, and utterly unraveling on the inside. He couldn't focus on anything for the past 3 days. Not the frantic calls from the London office. Not the acquisition pitch his board was demanding. Not the gala he was expected to host in just a few hours. Because Val hadn't answered his call. Not once. They'd spent nearly every evening together for 2 weeks straight. And then without warning she'd stopped replying. No texts. No return calls. Nothing. He wasn't used to being ignored. But this wasn't about ego. It was the hollow ache in his chest that tightened a little more each day she stayed silent. The elevator doors parted with a soft ding, Inside the penthouse office, his longtime friend and legal counsel, Dev Mathers, leaned against the marble bar, sipping espresso and looking entirely too amused. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Dev said, arching a brow. Zane tossed his coat onto the leather couch. "I didn't call you here for commentary." "No, you called me at 6 in the morning and said something's off. I need you to look into Valeria Wren." Dev eyed him. "So I did. But I'm going to preface this with, she's not hiding anything illegal." Zane braced both hands on the edge of the bar. "Then what is she hiding?" Dev pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the counter. "She's not who you think she is." Zane opened it slowly. Inside were photos, documents, a birth certificate, a newspaper clipping from 5 years ago, and a probate court summary. Zane's eyes scanned the top line. Estate of Leonard Wren. His gut twisted. "I thought her father died when she was a kid," he said, flipping through the documents. "He did," Dev replied. "Leonard Wren was her uncle, but he raised her like a daughter, owned a string of antique shops in Brooklyn, left her everything when he passed." Zane frowned. "She never said anything about that." Dev tapped the newspaper clipping. "Here's where it gets interesting. 6 months after the inheritance, she transferred ownership of the properties to a shell corporation, the same one that's been quietly buying up small commercial real estate in the outer boroughs." Zane looked up, confused. "You're saying Val's behind that company?" Dev nodded. "She used the funds to create a preservation grant for local artists and community spaces. She's been bankrolling it anonymously for years." Zane stared at the folder. "She doesn't want credit. No, she wants distance." He closed the file, his jaw tight. "Why the hell would she keep that from me?" Dev's voice softened. "Maybe because she didn't want you to treat her differently." Zane didn't respond. Later that night, the gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light, and the city's elite drifted between champagne towers and string quartets. Zane stood near the balcony, absently swirling a drink he hadn't touched. He didn't care about the speeches, the photographers, the investors. He only cared about the empty space at his side. "You look like a man being held hostage by his own event," a voice said behind him. Zane turned sharply. Val stood just inside the open doors, wearing a sleek black jumpsuit and a single silver cuff on her wrist. Her curls were pinned back in a style he hadn't seen before, elegant and precise, but her eyes were the same. He didn't speak right away, just stared. She stepped closer. "I thought about not coming." "Why did you?" "Because I was wrong to disappear." His voice was low. "You think that's all I want to hear?" "No," she admitted. "But I needed to say it anyway." Zane set his untouched glass on the railing. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie." Her gaze didn't waver. "I withheld something, because I liked the way you looked at me when you thought I was just a girl from the lost and found. I would have looked at you the same." "You say that, but you and I both know how the world works. The moment money enters the room, everything changes." He studied her. "So you hid your inheritance, your grant, the buildings, all of it." "I wanted something that wasn't built on what I inherited. I wanted to stand on my own." "You already do," he said quietly. Val's voice cracked slightly. "But I didn't want you to think I was pretending to be something I'm not." He took a step forward, closing the space between them. "You think I care about the money?" "I think you care more than you want to admit," she whispered. He reached for her hand. "I care that you left without a word. I care that I woke up every day wondering if I pushed too hard, said too much, wasn't enough." "You were too much," she whispered. "That's the problem. You made me feel like I wasn't pretending anymore, and I didn't know what to do with that." The string quartet shifted into a slow, haunting melody. Around them, couples took to the floor, but Zane didn't move. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come here tonight?" "Because I realized something," she said, her voice barely audible. "I've spent so long trying to make sure no one could take anything from me. But you. You're the only person I've ever wanted to give something to. He didn't hesitate this time. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Not the careful, questioning kind. The kind that said every wall had fallen. Every secret laid bare. Every part of him was hers to take. When they pulled apart, she looked up at him with wet eyes. What now? We leave, he said. Right now. No cameras. No speeches. Just us. And go where? Anywhere. Somewhere with a door that locks and no one asking for autographs. Her laugh was shaky. You're serious? He tightened his hold on her hand. Deadly. They slipped out a side door, unnoticed by the crowd. The night air hit them like freedom, and for the first time in days, Zane felt like he could breathe. In the back of the waiting town car, he turned to her. You know I'm not letting you disappear again. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Then don't give me a reason to. He looked down at her. I won't. But next time you vanish, I'm tearing the city apart. Val smiled, eyes closed. I believe you. As the car pulled away from the glittering hotel, Zane didn't look back. He already had everything he wanted sitting right beside him. Rain struck the wide windows of Zane's penthouse like a quiet metronome, steady and soft, while the city below blurred into streaks of gold and gray. Val stood barefoot on the marble floor of his living room, staring at a canvas she'd brought with her that afternoon. It leaned against the wall, unfinished colors bold but directionless. You stopped, Zane said, stepping behind her, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, his hair still damp from the walk back from the gallery he'd taken her to that afternoon. You were in the middle of something. She didn't turn. I was. Then I wasn't. He waited. I haven't painted anything new in weeks, she said, her voice quiet. I keep showing up with brushes and nothing to say. You don't owe the canvas anything, he murmured. Paint when you're ready. Val turned then, eyes searching his. You don't get overwhelmed by it? By what? That kind of silence. The kind that feels like it's trying to tell you something but you can't translate it. He stepped closer. I used to think silence meant I was failing. Now I think it just means I'm listening. She watched him for a moment, then leaned her head against his chest. You always say what I need to hear before I know I need it. I think it's because I've needed it too. Something in his voice made her pull back. You're distracted. I'm thinking, he admitted. About a conversation I had with my board this morning. She straightened slightly. What kind of conversation? The kind that starts with, Zane, you're making risky decisions, and ends with, we're voting on whether to override your authority on the East Harbor project. Val blinked. That's the one you said would return public space to the city. They want to turn it into high-rise luxury units. I want to turn it into a creative campus, studios, performance halls, affordable housing for artists and educators. But it's not as profitable on paper. So what happens now? I could walk, he said simply. Step down. Sign over my shares. Start something new. Her heart kicked. You'd really do that? He held her gaze. A year ago, I would have laughed at the idea. But now, there's more I want than just numbers on a screen. Val looked away. You can't throw away everything you built for me. I'm not throwing it away. I'm changing the way I use it. And it's not just for you. It's for me too. She crossed her arms. You're not the only one who's been offered something risky. Zane raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Last week, the director of the Midtown Art Collective came by the center. He saw one of my older pieces. Wants me to do a solo show. Full feature. 6 months from now. Zane stepped back, surprised. That's incredible. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure I'd do it, she said, voice tight. It means putting myself out there. Not hiding behind the grant or the programs. Just me. My name on the wall. Val, he said, walking to her. You've never hidden from anything. You show up for people who have nothing. You fight for spaces no one else sees value in. You create beauty where most people only see struggle. She met his eyes. It's not about being brave. It's about being seen. Then let them see you, he whispered. I already do. They stood quietly for a moment, the sound of the rain rising just enough to feel like a rhythm. Val reached for his hand. I want to try. Good, he said, lacing their fingers together. Because I already told the board I'm walking. Her eyes widened. You didn't. I did. And I told Dev to start the paperwork for a foundation. One that actually puts resources into creative development. Youth programs. Community spaces. Real investment. You're serious. I told you. I'm not running anymore. From silence. From risk. From anything that looks like you. She leaned up and kissed him, and for the first time in weeks, she felt her heartbeat steady. Later that evening, they stood on the rooftop, wrapped in a blanket, overlooking the drenched skyline. The storm had softened, leaving the city shining like it had been scrubbed clean. Val tilted her head against his shoulder. What are we going to call this new thing you're building? I was thinking the Wren Foundation. She pulled back, stunned. No. Zane, you changed the way I look at everything, he said. The way I think about power. About giving. About what it means to leave something behind. If I'm going to start over, it begins with the person who taught me how. I don't want to be your symbol, she whispered. You're not. He turned to her. You're my partner. Tears pricked her eyes. You really mean that? I want you beside me. In everything. The foundation. The art show. The quiet mornings. The chaos. All of it. She laughed softly. That sounds like a lot of paint-stained laundry and late-night ramen. Perfect. I'll get a second washer. Val took a breath, steadying herself. Ask me. He stilled. Ask you what? She stepped forward, eyes shining. If you're going to start over, Zane, then ask me to start over with you. For real. Not just in moments, but in a life. He didn't hesitate. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait. I had a whole plan. But you just destroyed it in the best way. Her breath caught. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, delicate but strong. Just like her. No excessive flair. Just intention. Valeria Wren. You make the city quieter. You make chaos feel like peace. And you made me remember what it means to be seen. Will you marry me? She stared at him, stunned. You had that in your coat? Since the night you kissed me on the sidewalk outside Grand Central. She laughed through tears. You were so cocky that day. I was terrified, he admitted. She didn't wait. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, the kind of kiss that didn't ask questions, that didn't need permission. Yes, she whispered against his mouth. Yes, Zane. Below them, the city moved on. Lights flickered. Horns honked. Somewhere, a train rumbled underground. But up there, on the rooftop, a billionaire who'd once thought he had everything held the one woman who'd shown him what it really meant to have something worth losing. And this time, he wasn't letting go. Zane's knuckles were barely white as he gripped the edge of the long oak table in the boardroom. But the tension in his shoulders spoke volumes. The board members of O'Connor Technologies sat in silent disbelief, their eyes darting between one another as the weight of his words settled into the silence. I appreciate everything we've built together, Zane said, his voice calm, steady. But I meant what I said. The East Harbor project is going forward as planned. If that means stepping down, so be it. No one replied right away. Harold Benton, the oldest board member and the man who'd known Zane's father, leaned back in his chair. And what will you do, Zane? Walk away from a company your family built. Zane didn't blink. I'm not walking away from anything. I'm walking toward something better. He didn't wait for a response. He closed the folder in front of him, slid it to the side, and stood. The foundation's already in motion. I've transferred my controlling shares to a trust. The mandate is simple, real impact, not just profit. As he strode out of the room, his phone buzzed. There was only one reason Val would be calling during the opening night of her gallery show. He answered as he stepped into the elevator. What's wrong? Her voice came through, breathless and laughing all at once. Nothing. I just sold 2 pieces. Zane, I sold them. He exhaled, his lips curving. Tell me you're calling from the middle of your own show. I'm hiding in the storage room. I needed to breathe. Breathe here, he said. I'm on my way. When he reached the gallery, the crowd had swelled past the front doors, people sipping cocktails and studying her work with thoughtful expressions. Her name was etched in gold lettering on the wall behind the welcome desk. It was surreal and exactly right. He found her near the back, no longer in the storage room, but standing by a canvas that held bold sweeps of indigo and copper. She wore a navy silk dress that bared one shoulder, her curls pinned up with hints of gold woven into the strands. As soon as she saw him, her eyes lit up in a way that made everything else in the room disappear. "You came," she said. "I told you I would." He leaned in, brushing his lips over her cheek. "You look like you just stepped out of a dream." She grinned. "That's how this feels. I've never seen this many eyes on my work." "They're not looking at your work," he said, pulling her gently toward him. "They're looking at you, and wondering how they ever missed it." She leaned into him, her voice softer now. "I was scared they wouldn't understand it, that they'd pick it apart." "Then they're not your audience," Zane said. "But tonight, they see it. They see you." One of the gallery curators approached and whispered something to Val. Her eyes widened. "All 5 pieces," she said slowly. "They're gone. Sold." Zane laughed, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I guess I won't be getting the one I wanted." She tilted her chin up. "Which one?" "The one with the skyline and the gold thread. The one that looks like it's about to unravel but somehow stays together. You can still have it. You just said it's sold." "I'll paint you another one," she said. "But it won't be the same." "Good," he said. "I don't want a copy. I want what's real." They stayed until the lights dimmed and the last guests filtered out. The gallery owner offered them champagne, but Val shook her head and tugged Zane's hand. "Come with me." They walked through the quiet city, hand in hand, until they reached the old brownstone where she used to live. The door was locked, the porch empty. She stepped up to it, running her fingers along the weathered wood. "They're turning it into a co-op," she said. "The landlord asked if I wanted in on the investment." Zane raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I said yes. I want to keep it the way it was. Real people. Real stories." He nodded slowly. "I have a place in Tribeca, but it's too quiet. Doesn't smell like paint or cinnamon." She turned to him, eyes shining. "Are you asking to move in?" "I'm asking if we can build something that doesn't make sense to anyone but us." She stepped close, lacing her fingers with his. "We already are." Weeks passed in a quiet rhythm neither of them had ever known. Their mornings were spent in sunlit kitchens, barefoot and laughing. Afternoons at the foundation, where Val took over the youth arts division and Zane focused on rehousing underserved programs. Nights were gallery openings, rooftop dinners, and the sound of brush strokes echoing through their shared loft. One evening, as spring melted into early summer, she found him on the rooftop, barefoot in jeans and a white shirt, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of rose and fire. He turned as she approached, holding something small in his hand. "I had something made," he said. She tilted her head. "Another ring?" "No," he smiled. "A key." She blinked. "I know we already share everything, but I wanted to give you something permanent. A key to everything that's mine. Not just the apartment. My life." She took it, closing her fingers around the smooth metal. "You already gave me that the day you let me see who you are underneath the suits." He gently pulled her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You gave me my life back. The one I didn't know I wanted. And you gave me one I never thought I deserved." They stood in silence, the wind curling around them like a promise. A year later, the Wren Foundation had funded over 20 new community initiatives. Val's second show opened to critical acclaim, and Zane's reimagined tech firm quietly flourished under new leadership that prioritized sustainability and access. Their wedding was held in the courtyard of the East Harbor campus, under strings of lights and a canopy of ivy. There was no press, no spectacle, just friends, family, and the kids from the center who threw flowers like confetti. She wore a gown made by a local designer, and he wore the same navy suit he'd worn the night they first kissed. When they read their vows, Val's voice trembled. You found me in a room full of forgotten things. And you never once asked me to be more than who I am. Zane's voice cracked. You reminded me that love isn't about what we build. It's about who we build it with. They danced barefoot beneath the stars, laughter echoing into the night. And when the music faded and the lights dimmed, they walked hand in hand toward a life that was never perfect, but always theirs. A life filled with late-night painting, shared missions, stolen kisses in crowded rooms, and the kind of love that wasn't loud but unshakably true. Together, they weren't just rewriting their story. They were living it fully and forever.